Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
Hi, this is Sanjeev.
And this is Tushar.
And we are listening to the Rotormouth. We are presenting the Rotormouth show.
Yeah, we are also listening. We have headphones on. It's good to listen to each other while we're talking also.
See, this is the confusion you've created with bumper stickers.
It's crazy.
What were you saying? Bhai ka full support.
Oh, so right now I was just... I was lucky today that I didn't get much traffic. All the way from... Yeah, I heard you were stuck.
Stuck and I was sweating and I don't know why I wore a shirt today for a change.
And a white one at that.
White one.
Yeah. I had a good time. I had a nice ride from home all the way to Bandra.
Okay.
I didn't get any traffic. And just generally, I tend to kind of zone out. I know it's probably not a good thing.
Zone out while riding?
Yeah. It's probably not a good thing while riding. I mean, it almost becomes automatic beyond the point.
You mean zoning out that way? Yeah, that I know.
Yeah,
that I understand.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure our colleagues will have many things to say about that.
Our colleagues will not even listen to our podcast, so it doesn't matter.
That's true. That's okay. So, so I was kind of zoned out in my own sort of world, and a couple of rickshaws came in front of me, and this like really made me smile. There's this rickshaw in front of me. On the top right, he had a sticker that said Momin Brothers. And at the back where there's a hatch to access the engine, the entire width of it was taken up by a big, very Manmohan Desai movie title type of sticker that says Bhai ka full support.
But he must be a full Manmohan Desai fellow.
He must be. Bhai ka full support. Matlab ki I just...
But Bhai ka full support means Salman Khan.
हाँ वो भी हो सकता है. I don't know. Maybe he's a fan.
And now Tubelight is coming, so this must be a new promotional tactic.
Could be. भाई का full support. I thought that made me smile. And then उसके बाजू में जो रिक्शा था, he had a smaller sticker, but again he had भाई written on the top right. Maybe another Salman fan. And उसके कांच पे, पीछे के कांच पे माँ की दुआ.
अरे वाह.
तो मतलब कि भाई का भी सपोर्ट है, माँ का भी सपोर्ट है. What could go wrong?
And this is completely like a full traditional serial that Ekta Kapoor makes where the family comes together and watches.
I don't know, man, but whatever it is, मेरे को लगा कि भाई ये बंदा है ना रिक्शा चलाता है. He is happy doing his job and उसके भाई का full support है.
अच्छा, हाँ, so we bought bumper stickers. You can think of anything that comes to mind. I am now trying to... okay.
Oh wow, we got one.
I couldn't afford a Volkswagen Thus Auto. Kya baat hai? This is Rocky. This is the Rocky. This has to be a part of a bulletin.
Hi.
This is too good.
Superb. So Friday, Saturday, I was in Bangalore.
Driving the Tiguan.
Yes, the Volkswagen Tiguan, which we mentioned on our bulletin. And I don't know if we mentioned on the podcast before.
No, we haven't.
Anyway, so in brief, it's Volkswagen's SUV.
Built on the MQB platform.
For those four of you that don't have no idea what that means, it's basically, a shared set of components. This is technically Volkswagen's replacement for the Yeti.
Okay,
right?
Which was a very good car.
Which was a good but not particularly popular car. I mean, at the time, I don't remember the exact numbers, but when it was available...
Very heavy clutch, but...
Really? I never drove one.
I drove one from Mussoorie to Dehradun.
Okay.
So I felt the clutch was quite heavy, but very interesting car to drive. Very, very responsive.
Okay. Anyway, so it didn't do particularly well, but like you, there were a few diehard fans.
No, I didn't buy it, so I just drove it for free, so it was fun.
So anyway, the Tiguan, coming back to that. So the Tiguan is basically VW's version of the Yeti replacement.
Okay.
Let me explain. So the Yeti replacement is called the Karoq. Yeah, Karoq. That is the name.
That's your Parsi aunt having a cutlet and saying that.
Yeah. Oh, Karoq she. So the Skoda version is going to be called the Karoq, but it's not coming till 2018. VW has launched essentially their version of it. Again, background, that the Rapid and the Vento is essentially the same car.
They're all the same.
They're all the same. So it's not just the platform, they share a lot of components. So sort of in a similar way, the Karoq and the Tiguan are essentially the same car with a different shell outside, different branding. So the Tiguan is going to be that class of vehicle, which means that it is basically अपना Creta से थोड़ा ज़्यादा,
okay,
but Endeavour से थोड़ा कम.
Endeavour
से थोड़ा कम.
और
Fortuner से भी कम.
Okay.
In size. Okay. So it's not as big as a Fortuner, but it's not as small as a Vitara Brezza or a Creta or whatever. It's somewhere in the middle.
It's that in-between version. It's the Tucson version.
It's basically straight up against the Tucson, the Hyundai Tucson. So point is, I drove the Tiguan.
So how was it?
It didn't have a heavy clutch. You know why?
Why?
Because it's an automatic.
So nice.
So no
There's no manual in this.
There's no manual. It's a dual clutch automatic, 7-speed, new gearbox. I really like the car, and generally, first of all, this was a almost like a low key kind of.
What colors was it in?
So we all had the grey.
That was the standard color that they've launched it in.
Pretty much. So if you've been on Twitter with any of these automotive publications, you'll see that there's a standard car, and the interesting thing is that for the 4-5 day schedule that had already occurred by the time I got there, the weather was pretty much stable. Anyway, so by the time I got there, we'd already had some 4-5 days of this schedule. Amazingly.
And you cut a song also while you were driving it with Clint Thomas of Quicker.
That wasn't Clint Thomas.
Who was that?
That was Karan Tripathi of Team BHP.
I was wondering how he started looking different.
No, that was Karan Tripathi of Team BHP. I'm pretty sure he works for Team BHP, but he tells everybody he works for Motoroids. So I think he's lying about where he works. I don't know why. I don't know what his motivations are.
So you were doing this karaoke version in the car? Carpool karaoke.
So basically, he decided that he's going to try the Android Auto that is part of the entertainment system. It connects to your smartphone.
Okay.
No matter what smartphone it is. It has Apple CarPlay.
So this is the music he had on his playlist.
So he was using, his excuse was this was coming from Google Music. And suddenly it started playing Back for Good by Take That, which is like apne youth ka gana hai. So first of all, the weather was great. It was raining. It was overcast. So unfortunately, the road was so... it was great. It was amazing. So anyway, so I'm driving on this road. It's a Kadak road. Karok road it is. Going from Bangalore to Chikmagalur. It's about 270 kilometers. Okay. And it's absolutely dead straight. Maybe there's about 100-150 kilometers towards the end, which is not a national highway. It's a state highway. Brilliant roads, brilliant weather. You had these overcast skies. So pretty much any photo you took was Instagram quality immediately.
I saw
you must have seen that.
Yeah, I saw one picture you took. That was very nice.
Yeah, and everybody else's were also nice. It wasn't, just my God-given talent, which I have a lot of, but that was not.
No, we don't want to know that.
Okay, so we were driving, good road, good weather, automatic transmission, so no tension. The one word, if I had to describe this car, is relaxing.
Okay.
Like you get in, you adjust, it's got a power adjustable driver's seat, and you just, set yourself in a comfortable position. The only thing is the steering has tilt and telescope, but it's not powered. That's okay, you can live with it. We were driving the high-end version, which had a panoramic sunroof, which is crazy looking for this category of vehicle. I don't think you have a panoramic sunroof on any other SUV of this size. So it stretches all the way from the front to the back. So we kept that because it wasn't particularly sunny, so we kept the visor open and glass closed. Just really comfortable. Seats are nice, well bolstered. You don't feel fatigued. There are these cars that I'm sure you've driven a fair number of road trips in your your lifetime. There are some cars that you need to like get out and stretch, and your bum is paining and your back is in a weird position. It just happens. It's a combination of things: the way the seat is, the way the lumbar support is, the way the ergonomics just fit together. With this car, it didn't matter. I have a unique sort of condition where I get car sick if I'm not driving. So if I'm sitting with somebody else, particularly with, people like Karan Tripathi from Team BHP, he's got a more aggressive kind of driving style. And if this was an average car, I would have vomited 3 or 4 times by the time I reached the hotel.
Okay.
I can't deal with being a passenger.
Okay. So,
but in this case, I didn't have that problem. It was very smooth, very comfortable. Suspension is good. It's a little bit firm in the way that Volkswagens are. The sharp bumps, you get that thud, you get that judder. But otherwise, it was quite pliant, quite nice. AC works well, 3-zone climate control. Left side ka alag, right side ka alag, piche ka alag. So do you have any questions about the Tiguan? Because I can talk night and day about it. I had a good time. It was a long
not
ride.
really. I don't have, because as you know, I was privy to information about the Tiguan. Which I'm not allowed to speak about.
Right.
So I'm familiar with it. So anyways, it's an interesting car. Yes, I agree with whatever you said, because whatever I've read about it, I haven't driven it.
Yep.
According to me, it's going to be a very, very successful car, because Volkswagen has got it probably 2 years late. They should have got it earlier, because it's done well internationally. I've driven the first generation Tiguan abroad. It's a very good car.
You have to throw that in, abroad.
Of course.
People don't call me abroad.
So no, it's a great car. Like you said, whatever you described is exactly how the car is. And I personally I also felt the same thing, that the reason it will do well is because it's very, very comfortable, very safe.
You don't think it being that much more expensive than the Tucson, which it's supposed to go up against, you don't think that's going to be a problem for them?
See, I think also they're trying not to compete with the Tucson. I don't know.
So the vibe I'm getting, I may be wrong with this, but I'm probably close to the truth, is that they're pitching it as a cheap German luxury SUV, not an expensive SUV.
So then this pricing works.
Yeah.
If that
it's just that I feel that it's a little bit of a niche. Na? So it's like you've decided that I want a European car. I want something with that, that vibe. And it is undeniable. There is a certain feel or a certain user experience.
No. What will happen is they'll price it at this. They'll start with this. They'll wait for a year. After the initial response that they get, they'll figure out where they want to go with it. Then depending on if they feel the sales are not up to their projected numbers, then they'll start bringing the price down, or they start throwing in other stuff with it. But I'm quite sure there's a whole strategy, because knowing how Gagan and the rest of the team is at the moment, they are very, very serious about making this a success.
Right.
So this is not something they're taking lightly.
So all these things are going to be sort of adding up to their woes internationally. So they're going to need sales support for sure from wherever they operate.
Right.
And like you said, I'm sure there's a strategy behind this. And
I'm presuming, because these guys are very smart. So let's see. See what happens.
But okay, so we're talking about there are two variants. They're essentially the same. Another plus point about this car I have to mention is that the comfort line and the high line, that's the mid, there's no low model. There's a mid model and there's a high model.
Okay.
Right? Both of them are very well specified. So in the mid model, you don't get the panoramic sunroof, and there are a few like bits and bobs that you don't get.
So this is the reason I feel that the car will do well.
It's a good package.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. So this is the strategy that I'm talking about, that these guys have got this kind of sensibility playing along.
Okay, let's take a break and come back.
Okay.
That was Tantrik Steve from Hansraj College, Delhi, performing at IIT Bombay's Mood Indigo. Just like them, there's a lot of new talent and art coming out of colleges all across India, but unfortunately most of this goes completely unnoticed or ignored. To fix this, we started atkt.in. Hi, I'm Ankur, I'm a musician and a rapper, and I found that one of the best things about being an artist myself is finding new talent. Through atkt.in, Tanya, my colleague who's a dancer, and our whole team really is putting all of our efforts into discovering and promoting all the coolest talent that's coming out of colleges all across India. And this goes up on our website, our social media, TV, radio, and now, of course, this podcast with IVM. Make sure you go to our website, support the talent with your likes, your shares, your comments. All of that really matters. Go ahead, check it out. atkt.in.
Welcome back to the Rotormouth podcast. And now the second topic on our agenda is, as I have put it, ये GST क्या है, तुषार?
ये GST क्या है? GST is, I'm sure this is going to be a topic that people are going to be talking about for
the next 2 years.
Probably. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's not going away for sure. July 1st, I believe, is the deadline.
Absolutely.
For GST. And the initial guidelines have come out. And of course, the automotive industry has been very quick to respond. I don't know if you noticed this last week.
Prices have come down.
Prices have come down for premium cars, for large cars, for luxury cars.
So you and me can buy those cars now?
Absolutely not. I'm still unemployed. You are a self-made millionaire. And it's not going to be...
So if I'm a self-made millionaire, I can buy it, you can't buy it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll buy it for you.
That's actually how it works.
So I buy you the car.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So
the producer is also putting up his hand and saying, buy me one also.
Sab log. BMW, Mercedes, you've got 4 here.
Okay.
So BMW, surprisingly enough, shortly after the guidelines came out, BMW sent out a press release, very, very proudly saying that we are first in preemptively passing on GST benefits to the customer on all their India-made models.
Okay.
So to give you a background of this, the taxes, the GST taxes, which subsume certain indirect taxes on these products. It's a common tax, right? Earlier you had X tax, Y tax, Z tax, whatever.
Yeah, like you had excise, sales tax, octroys.
All that stuff, VAT. Yeah. So all those things sort of get combined into one number.
Okay.
And it just so happens that for luxury cars, which are made in India, that number comes down.
Yeah, it was something 50% and above, something like that earlier.
So depending on whether it was a large car or an SUV, you could pay over 50% in indirect taxes. And that's come down to 43% with GST.
Okay, but this 43% will be across the board, like anywhere in the country, it will be 43%.
That is the idea. The whole idea of GST is to have a common structure which, there's no scope for arbitrage between states and things like that. It has lots of financial implications which are relevant to people with a business background. I don't have one. But one of the small benefits is going to be that because there's a common tax rate, there won't be reason for people to have depots in different states for that benefit. Anyway, to the consumer, 50% plus tax has come down to 43%. This is a not insignificant drop in these prices.
Absolutely.
We are talking about up to 12% BMW is estimating, because they're sort of preempting GST benefits, even though the GST does not apply right now. They're preempting that, and they're also providing other benefits like a cheaper finance rate and things like that. So they figure that you can expect up to 12% as a benefit. Mercedes, depending on where you buy your car, it is between 2 and 9%.
Why
off.
where you buy your car means?
Again, right now, taxes are different in different states.
Okay.
So if you live in a state where taxes are already low or lower than other places, then the benefit from a GST type pricing regime is going to be minimal for you.
Okay. So what I'm understanding is, I'm putting myself in the layperson's situation right now. A GST is going to benefit you if the taxes are in the state that you're living in were higher than the GST rates at this particular point.
Obviously.
One is that. Secondly, depending on the segment of car that you're buying, because as we have not touched on, but we are touching on now, smaller cars, apparently the GST is not going to make too much of a difference on the small cars. It's actually going to go up by a few percent.
Small cars largely are going to be, from what we understand, small cars are largely going to be unchanged in terms of prices.
Right.
The GST rate, depending on whether it's a petrol or a diesel, will be between 29 and 31%. That's the base GST rate of 28%, plus there's a 1 to 3% cess.
Yes.
So 29 to 31% is what you're looking at, which is a little bit lower than the present rate. I'm not sure what the present rate is. It's a little bit above 31. I think it's 33 or something like that.
Okay.
So more or less, I don't think you're going to see a change in prices. And again, we're talking about cars that are already affordable. So as a percentage, even if you're passing on a small percentage of benefit to the consumer, the amount is not going to be very big. Whereas with the luxury cars, when you're talking about 50 lakh rupee cars, even a small percentage is a substantial amount of money. So we're talking about saving lakhs of rupees in large cars. But if the manufacturers decide to pass on any sort of benefit for small cars, the amount is not going to be great.
Okay, here's the...
Maybe they'll give you free rubber mats.
Okay, here's the irony.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's going to be cheesy. But
I hope you know what irony means.
Of course I do.
I'm going to find out now.
Yeah, the irony is here that we are making cars that would be bought by the affluent class cheaper for people who actually don't give a shit whether the car is cheaper or not, and cars that would actually be affordable and people would actually think about pricing. The pricing has not changed. Do you see the irony there? It's hilarious at one level if you think of it, because a guy who can afford to buy a 50 lakh rupee car is not generally going to bother too much if he's getting like a 5 lakh rupee discount.
Look, the way I see it, there seems to be sort of an attempt to not rock the boat too much. So there are a few positives, a few negatives, but generally, there's everything is kind of circling around the same basic point. And if you take it on balance overall, the GST guidelines, things don't change all that much.
Which is actually the truth, because as we were doing research for this, also we realized that it's not going to make too much of a difference. But again, as with the media, they've gone all around town making it sound like it's going to be a very scary thing. And people have started jumping the gun without actually reading the facts.
I must admit that I almost jumped the gun myself.
Okay.
When the guidelines came out, there was a number thrown about 31% for motorcycles over 350 cc.
I see.
So essentially anything above a bullet 350 would be taxed at a rate of 31%.
I see.
And essentially the social media backlash on that was कि भाई लग गए. Already, I mean, I was putting together pennies, trying to figure out how I can afford an EMI on my first big bike, and now the government comes and does this, and bhai, lag gaye.
Okay.
But the reality, if you think of perhaps reading a little bit or maybe asking somebody that knows a little better, the reality is that we don't know yet.
Yeah.
The thing is that motorcycles with engine capacities greater than 350cc will attract a tax rate, a total of 28 GST plus 3 cess. So that's 31.
Yeah.
Right?
So isn't that the same?
The indirect taxes on bikes of that class were 30% already. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a 1% increase.
Is that going to make a difference to our lives?
To nobody who's buying a big bike. It's not going to make a huge difference to your EMI. And if you have the cash to put down on, tens of lakh rupees of motorcycles, it's not going to matter to you anyway.
My point exactly. So it doesn't really matter too much what the difference is going to be. If it's just 1%, who really cares?
But there is a caveat. The lag gaye caveat is there.
Why is that?
Okay, so the thing is that we know about items that are built in India, which is the reason I mentioned as a classification, as a qualification, that BMW and Mercedes have dropped prices for their made in India cars.
Okay.
So only the cars that they actually assemble, CKD, whatever, in India have seen that price drop.
Okay.
Fully imported vehicles have not seen any kind of announcement or price drop.
Right.
Fully imported vehicles will be subject to a different type of GST rate, most likely.
So when I walk into a showroom, I should be asking that guy कि भाई ये बाइक या गाड़ी इंडिया में बना है कि नहीं है?
Not really. I mean, what is relevant to you is the price. If they are giving you a fully imported price at a throwaway price, then of course you should get it.
They do that?
I hope so.
No, if they're doing that, we are all going right now.
Right now.
Okay. Now, the craziest thing that we heard was, of course, it doesn't affect any of us, but of course, everybody started jumping, is the tax on hybrid, the GST pricing on hybrids, the taxation on hybrids. We have heard that the taxation makes the hybrid as expensive as buying your regular SUV or luxury car.
Yeah. So, that is a little bit strange.
But tell me one thing. The hybrid cars being sold in this country are the Camrys, right, of the world.
Camry and Accord hybrid, I think.
So those are not cheap by any standards anyways.
No, they're 30-40 lakh rupee cars.
So why this whole hoopla and people jumping and screaming and...
Well, it doesn't really matter, honestly. I don't know if too many people were particularly concerned about the hybrid cars getting more expensive. What is interesting is that the government seems to have been interested in promoting green technologies.
Right.
And hybrid cars is a green technology. So you can't fit this in your mind. Okay? If you think this is a green technology, and it is, and you want to promote green technologies, why would you raise the taxes of hybrid cars from what is equivalent to a small car to now equivalent to an SUV?
Because I think the government wants to go all electric by 2030, right?
That's what they're saying, yes. And there's been quite a bit of talk about the whole electric infrastructure that they're building out. Mahindra launched their EV 2.0 push, which is essentially their plan for the future.
So what is that? What does that mean?
Unfortunately, I couldn't go for the event, but they seem to be doing a lot of work in charging infrastructure, in battery technology, things like that. I believe there are factories coming up, not necessarily of Mahindra, but there are factories coming up for advanced batteries for electric vehicles.
Tell me one thing. If you buy an electric car today, where do you charge it? Is there charging stations available on the highway?
No.
So what happens? Like suppose if, let's say for example, hypothetically, I leave from Vashi. I have an office in Worli. I'm sure my battery will not run out in such a short span, but whatever the range is. But suppose I had to charge somewhere. Where do I charge?
You can't. And if you run out of juice, then there's nothing you can do. Your car will be dead. There's no way that you can, get a small battery and plug it in or jump start it or something. You have to call a flatbed truck to put your car on and take it wherever.
So in the middle of traffic, I'm visualizing this scene. People are honking. My car has gone dead. There is nothing I can do.
There is nothing you can do but curse your luck.
And then stand on top of the car and hope and pray that there is some divine intervention.
Yes, that's basically what you can do. And that is the problem with electric vehicles, that you need a larger infrastructure to support them. Look, it's the same thing. Today we take petrol pumps for granted, right?
Right.
But if you're on a very, very long highway with no petrol pumps in the middle and you happen to have forgotten to tank up, you're essentially in the same boat. The only difference is that you can perhaps take a lift to the nearest petrol pump, however far that might be, fill up a jerry can, bring it back to your car, throw it in and continue on your way.
Can't, like you told me, you can't do that with an
electric car. You can't do that with an electric car.
So you can't buy a battery and just come and fix it.
Exactly. So all the more reason that you need an infrastructure. And from what I'm reading, people are making big bets and big investments like Mahindra in the infrastructure. Now, when people are making big investments, you can sure as shit be sure that there is some level of engagement with government. So maybe it's not that surprising that electric cars are getting a nice tax sort of break. Well, you can't say break because they're being kept at 12%, but hybrids are suddenly discouraged with a ridiculous tax rate.
So without naming anybody,
which we can't.
Yeah, which we can't because otherwise everything will shut down.
And I like my life.
You like your life?
I don't want I don't want to be stabbed. I don't want my house to be firebombed. Things like that. Yeah, okay. So there's plenty of conspiracy theories that you can make up, but let's face it, we don't have the information on that. All we can say is that the smart money seems to be going to electric technology and infrastructure, and hybrids are not getting any kind of benefit from the GST regime.
Okay, so GST, putting it in a nutshell, very simply, before all the listeners go off to sleep, small cars remain the same.
Small cars, yeah, mostly remain the same.
Luxury cars?
They get cheaper. Great if you're a luxury car buyer or if you're just entering into that luxury space. Superb. You'll get a cheaper car and not by a small amount. It's going to be a very, very decent discount.
Hybrid cars?
Hybrid cars will get much more expensive. Already buying a hybrid car in India, you would have to be a very, very specific sort of customer. I don't know how many people own hybrid Camrys or the hybrid Accords.
People probably don't even know what it does.
Yeah, I don't know if they're entirely aware. You would have to be a very niche customer. I don't think that niche customer is going to increase in magnitude. So your hybrid cars are essentially pointless now.
Electric cars?
Electric cars, I think the tax rate has not changed. So, but based on what we are hearing about all the investments being made in the electric space, I think electric cars will become more viable to buy. See, at this point, like you're saying, an electric car may not be viable to buy unless you're very, very specific about your commute and your range, essentially, because you're going to be charging at home and if you're lucky, at office. Electric cars are going to get more viable.
Right.
They're not going to get cheaper as far as we know. From the tax rate, but again, there are more guidelines to come out.
Okay.
Motorcycles remain mostly the same. Even the large ones, mostly the same.
Okay.
Over 350cc. But here, and there's a caveat here, as always there is, we don't know what's going to happen to imported vehicles.
Okay.
Okay. So whether it's cars, whether it's bikes, imported vehicles are subject to a whole bunch of import duties.
Right.
So there's a standard duty, there's a countervailing duty, there's a special additional duty. From what I understand, from what I was told by some accountant friends, the countervailing duty and special additional duty will be subsumed by...
Subsumed. You're making
taken in.
I know.
Gapcha lega wo.
Gapcha lega. No, you're using new words and all. Trying to sound fancy.
So the new GST, I think it's called integrated GST. IGST, which
IGST.
Yes,
very
IGST.
Nice.
That will apply to the imported vehicles. I think that is supposed to subsume certain duties, which may or may not come down. It might get expensive. It might get cheaper. We don't know.
Okay.
We do know that people have been, at least people in my circle have been concerned about what's going to happen to their big bike dreams. Ever be able to afford a Ducati or a Triumph or whatever. What I can tell you is that a lot of these motorcycle manufacturers, their business model depends on importing fully built motorcycles from Thailand.
Right.
Now, Thailand and India have a free trade agreement, which means that the duties on these imports is lower than other countries, which is why they're able to sell vehicles in India at the rates that they are. Okay. Whether you think they're cheap or expensive, they're actually cheap compared to if they were to import them from Japan or the US, in which case you would be paying stupid rates for any of these vehicles. Because they're made in Thailand, they are attracting a lower duty, and they're able to get, their entire business model seems to be built on that. Now, it's going to be critical that the upcoming GST guidelines that apply to imported vehicles, it's going to be critical that those don't do scary things like they did with hybrid cars. If they decide that they're going to bump up the rate on imported vehicles by 20%, then sachi mein lag gaye.
Okay, so on that note, I think we can end this segment saying that we've given a all-round view of what GST is.
Lag gaye edition close kare?
Lag gaye edition close kare.
ठीक है.
Tushar, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
That's it for today. We are Rotormouthing on Facebook and Twitter. Like our page, follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the podcast on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcast app that you like.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out
IVM Podcasts
to get some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.